Good. All right. So a number of you fell into the trap that I predicted you would fall into. You looked at the prologue and you deduced from the prologue your theology. What did I say about the prologue? Somebody remind me.
It was
It doesn't really reflect his beliefs, or the middle reflects way more than the other.
Okay, yes. Next time, remember to raise your virtual
Sorry.
hands so you all don't talk at once. So yes, right? Crystal, you have something to add? Go ahead.
I was going to say how you mentioned that the prologue was a sort of, I forget, I don't know how to word it correctly, but the author was kind of like making fun of the original text, and that's what the prologue was.
Making fun of the traditional views of God, right?
Yeah.
So, and remember, the book of Job is not, maybe it's based on historical events, but it's written kind of like a fable, right? So don't take stuff literally. Some of you are taking this prologue literally. Stop it, right? This is the author weaving a tale, and possibly, of course, Job existed. I'm sure he did. Everybody, I mean, this is standard human being, right? So remember, right, the author is weaving a tale, a philosophical tale that we are supposed to learn from. Don't take things literally, right? So, and especially in the prologue and the epilogue, remember this, make sure you jot this down. Here the author is making fun, he's being ironic, he's making fun of the traditional views of religion, traditional views of God, and so forth. He's trying to move away from those views, right? So if you're going around saying, oh, at least 80% of you were going around all spooked up by how God, you know, how could God allow this, and how could he allow himself to be moved by Satan? And God didn't do any of this. This is the prologue. This is pure fiction, right? The real thing, the real message we know is going to come in the dialogues. Is everybody super clear on this? Put your hand in the screen. Who is not clear about what I just said? Who's confused? Raise your hand. Okay. Okay. So be careful, all of you. In the test, I don't want to see this. If I see this in the test, you're going to lose points. Now it's okay. You can write what you want in your reading assignments. But if I see you in the test, drawing your theology from the prologue, you're going to miss points, right? Because that will show me you have misunderstood the book completely. Islam, you have a question?
Yes, just a quick one. This is for just the book of Job, right? Or is this for future books to have dialogue, prologue, and epilogue?
No, just the book of Job, right? Future books will be different. Okay, excellent. So let's remind ourselves, let's go into this prologue now, right? Crystal, remember to take down your hand if you're done with your question. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so I just wanted to clarify, only the dialogue is like what's correct, right?
Yes, the dialogue is what you want to focus on to deduce your theology, who God is, right?
All right.
Who God is, what the book of Job is doing, he's starting from a view of God, which is in the prologue, which most people have, that God is playing with our destinies, that he's the source of our suffering, that he's allowing evil to take control. I mean, most of us have this view that God is somehow behind our pain, and we blame him, right? Why we blame him? Because we believe he's in control. He's the one behind our pain. So the prologue actually is what most of us think. In the book of Job, we're going to move from that perspective to a new vision of who God is, right? So we have to be ready for that, right? Okay, so let's go to this prologue. We're going to learn a few things about Job. And again, he's making fun, right? This is all ironic. So let's begin. Go to page 5. Are you all there? Wave at me if you're there. Page 5. Put your hand in the screen. Okay. All right. We're going to have, first of all, a description of Job. Once upon a time, in the land of Uz, there was a man named Job. And now it's very interesting. Watch this. Watch what the author does. He was a man of perfect integrity who feared God and avoided evil. And at that moment, you're waiting to hear details about what? What did the author just say about Job? He has integrity, he fears God. What kind of list do you want to have now? What do you think the author should describe at this point?
How he wasn't, his morals.
Exactly, Colon. Good, Colon. Next time, raise your hand, but good.
Sorry.
Yes. Who was the other one? It disappears. This Zoom's driving me crazy. Karuchi, go ahead.
Yeah, you would expect the author would describe how he lived his faith.
Okay, excellent, right? You would expect a list of virtues. You know, he helped the poor, he helped the widow, he was, you know, he did his, you know, sacrifices. Instead, what do you have? What is the list you have here? What does the author list instead of the virtues? Ibatulin, go ahead.
He feared God and avoided evil. That's it.
No, right after that, the list. After the description of his goodness. Karuchi, go ahead.
He kind of gives us his demographics.
Yeah,
Like he had a family and daughters and sheep and ox and, you know, that kind of thing. Like
absolutely.
material stuff.
An inventory of his wealth, right? So this is, you should already see what the author is trying to do. What is the author trying to connect? And what is the subliminal message? Giannakopoulos.
That he was a good man, but he was very rich.
So yeah, that we know that, but what's the author saying by connecting the two? What is the subtle message he's giving us? Let's see, I have no idea who's raising their hands. Crystal, last name, please.
Oh, sorry. I'll fix that in a second. He's indirectly saying that the reason that, you know, that he has all this stuff because he fears God and avoids evil.
Exactly. The author is making a very subtle point. He's saying Job is virtuous, connecting to his wealth. The hidden message is that perhaps Job is virtuous because he knows that will make him wealthy, right? Which is exactly what the accuser was saying, right? So the author is kind of subtly saying that Job's virtue, in a way, is what gives rise to his wealth, right? He was perfect integrity, avoided evil, and therefore, it seems, right, he had 7 sons, daughters, sheep, camels, oxen, right? So the author is kind of making fun of Job, kind of making a very subtle criticism. Is Job really virtuous for the sake of virtue, or is he virtuous for the sake of all of the wealth that will ensue from this virtue, right? So make sure you write this down. The author seems to be hinting that Job might be serving God in order to be wealthy. Job knows that if he serves God, he will be blessed, and perhaps this is the only reason he's doing so. Karuchi.
Yeah, I had a thought about that too. I was thinking that perhaps he's also making commentary on those who are quote unquote faithful, that perhaps these are the things that they hope that God gives them.
Yes.
You know, and maybe that's what they pray for. Like, I pray for a new job, new money, you know, I hope I get that house. I want that girl, you know, or whatever, which is kind of all of the material things that are unsustainable in life anyway, but your faith is supposed to carry you through anything.
Exactly, right? Behind Job, there's a criticism of the average believer, which most of us are at that stage, by the way. None of us really leave completely that state, right? We all want to, right? We're all at some point asking God, please give me this, you know, this grade or this car or this person, right? And so he's really criticizing a certain religious mentality that is thinking that God is a kind of, you know, universal vending machine, that if you poke it in the right way, right? If you do some sacrifices and prayers in the right way, boom, you will get, right? If you go to, in Barnes and Nobles, to the aisle, very big aisle on Christianity, many of these books is how God can make you prosperous, how God can help you find your soulmate, how God can do this, how God can do that, right? Our society has made religion into this kind of dynamic, right? We are living in a time where God is just there to bless us, right? And so we have here a subtle criticism, right? Is God just this big vending machine that if you do the right thing, he's going to give you what you need? Or is it more complicated than that, right? So that's the first. Now let's just stop briefly on the description of Job, because a lot of you were annoyed that Job had slaves. Some of you were annoyed that he was so rich, right? Can you really be that good if you're that rich, right? And so I want to stop on the Hebrew of this definition of perfect integrity, and the other, actually, the translation is not so good. Usually it's good translation, but he's missing. There's 2 words here that describe Job. I'm going to write them in the chat, and this is important. He is Yashar in Hebrew, right? And he is Tam. Okay, let's look at these 2 words. Yashar simply means straight, literally. So meaning Job walks the line, right? He is, what did I put in my notes? I put it in a certain way. Yeah, he follows, right? He follows the norm. Yashar is you're going straight. You're following the rules. You're following the right path, right? It could almost be you walk the line, right? I think that's even a good translation of it. He walks the line. He does what he's told, right? There's no thinking through, just doing what he's told. And then, so this in a way you could understand better why he has slaves, right? Because if he walks the line and follows the rules of society of his time, then he's going to have slaves. So Job in this text and we'll see this with the word tam, he's not yet at the highest level of spirituality. We see this in the word tam. Tam means actually naive. Okay, that's what it means. It's a person, more specifically actually, tam in our today's vernacular would be Mr. Nice Guy. Right? Job is a nice guy. That's basically what the text is saying. Job is a nice guy. Now, does this make him particularly elevated to be a nice guy? Why do you think he's a nice guy? What makes him such a nice guy? What's missing in Mr. Nice Guy? Colon, go ahead.
I was gonna say he can attribute that to his morals.
You go what? Sorry?
Attribute it to his morals.
So yeah, so he's moral, but moral in the sense of walking the line, doing what he's told, right? Nothing outside of the box. And at the same time, he's very naive. So the text is this, there's a slight criticism, right? I see one of you answered, Ahmad. Go ahead, Ahmad. Tell us more. This is interesting what you wrote in the chat.
He needs to get tested, Mr. Nice Guy. He's just like a little child. Doing what mommy and daddy says is right. And then life, yeah.
You got it. Job is missing a taste of dirt. And you put it very nicely, right? He's Mr. Nice Guy because he's been sheltered all his life. He was born in wealth with a silver spoon in his mouth. Of course he's going to be nice. Who's not going to be nice, right? He hasn't yet gone through the darkness, the dirt, right? And this is why his goodness or his righteousness is still considered by the text naive, simplistic, childish, right? He hasn't yet grown to the full spiritual level, right? When we study Maimonides next, right? Actually, this is our next author. He says Job was good, but he wasn't yet wise, right? Why? Because he hadn't yet gone through life. You're not truly good if you haven't been like, who was it again? Ahmad said, right, if you haven't been tested, right? He hasn't gone through the dirt. Kor, you have a question. Go ahead.
I wanted to say how Job has had it easy. Like he's had wealth and he's had his family there. He hasn't seen hardship. So once he gets that, he's like, oh, I give up. Like that's it. I'm done. And it just shows us how it's like in good times, if you're like doing okay, it's because God is helping you. And then if one thing goes bad, it's like, okay, I'm being punished now.
Okay.
God hates me. Yeah.
Very good. He's not able to see God right? Or he sees God everywhere, but in a way that's, problematic. Like in a way, he's unable to deal with the pain, at least initially, right? Very good, course. So we will now see the process, right? Whereby we will now see Job entering this dark night and see how he comes out, right? And what's interesting is that the way he comes out is completely different than the way he used to be. In other words, the whole process of suffering, right, that he goes through is going to make Job into a completely different person. And we have to see what happens. What is the transformation that occurs, right? And who does Job become, right? He's moving away. We'll see that he's not only moving away from his friends, right, in the story. His friends come, they have a certain theology, they have a certain worldview, and Job is like, no, you guys make no sense. This is not working for me, what you're saying, right? So he's moving away from his friends, but he's also moving away from himself, right? In the text, he's changing. So I want to stop right now briefly, after I get a couple questions, right? I want to stop right now briefly on how Job changes. Who was he in the prologue and who do you see him becoming in the dialogues, right? First of all, a couple questions. Let's see. Well, the questions are gone. Okay, no more questions? All right. Oops, I missed it. Islam, go ahead.
So basically you're saying that the believer or well, I'm not sure. I see him as a prophet of God the way I learned it, but when you're saying though he's not like in the beginning he's not tested, so he hasn't really learned uh what's after or what goes after even how a test feels like. And then when he goes through the test, the version I learned, I think when he goes through the tests and trials, and this is like losing like his family and everything. So after those trials, he is able to stay like faithful to the creator. Is that what you're saying? And he's more matured as a believer after trials from the creator.
So we don't know yet, right?
Oh, okay,
We know
okay.
he changes, but we don't know what he becomes.
Okay.
We're about to get there, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know yet if it will look exactly like the vision you had, right?
Okay.
Get
We'll see.
there. Good.
We'll
Now
see.
there's a couple more people who have their hands up, and I have no idea who you are. Goldberg, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, over time, it might be too light to say that he becomes a questioner. I think that he becomes pretty agitated at a lot of the things that, that in his mind, God is personally putting him through. And then I think, I know we're not there yet, but obviously it gets to the point where God explains to him that it's not so black and white. And I think those three friends that he has are presenting a really black and white view of what, I guess, back then religion was, or sometimes it could still be today. So I guess the growth of him kind of becoming a questioner, someone who, as we'll see later, wrestles with God and really questions what's going on and understands that it's okay to kind of question things, but not necessarily, but do it with the understanding that you don't necessarily know everything, and it might not be through like the prism with which you're looking at. So.
Okay, good. You're bringing us to the question I asked, right? So this is the question: whom does Job become as he begins to suffer? And the first thing we're seeing here, I'm going to put in the chat, is what Goldberg mentions. He moves from being submissive to rebellious, right? Let's look at that a little bit. Actually, yeah. Yes, let's do that, right? So first thing we notice, right, Job is moving from being pretty submissive, right? When you look at the prologue, you see him, very neatly doing the right thing, right? When his children go and do a party, he comes the next day, makes a big sacrifice just in case they sinned, right? You see Job very, doing everything perfect, making sure every, how do we say, every letter is dotted. What is this, the expression with the dot and the line? Anybody knows? Adu, do you know? he dots his I's and he crosses his T's. There we go. Thank you, Karachi. Right? He dots his I's. All his I's are dotted. All his T's are crossed neatly. Right? Job is the person in handwriting class who would have that perfect handwriting, right? That everyone can read. So he's now changing, right? This is not the same Job when you have. Let me go to page 23, for example. Go there with me. Go to page 23. Let's see. Everybody's on page 23. Put your hand in the screen if you're there. Okay. So I'm reading at the last paragraph, right? Therefore, I refuse. Are you there? Put your hand in the screen if you're there. Therefore, I refuse. Okay. So here's Job now, right? Therefore, I refuse to be quiet. I will cry out my bitter despair, right? He's in a way unleashed, right? The nice, stable Job who was, doing everything perfect, walking the line. Now he's all over the place. He's angry. He's frustrated. He's unleashing he's becoming rebellious. And like Goldberg said, he is doubting, questioning, angry, frustrated, right? That's the first shift we have. What other two shifts do we see in the text? Let's see who still has their hand up. Adu, go ahead.
So I had my hand raised, not particularly for this, but more to like, I guess, answer the first question. So like from a psychological standpoint, he kind of goes through like the stages of grief, where, well, I have to hold on. Pretty much like he goes from, throughout the text, like he was in denial about like what had happened to him. Then from that, he goes on to anger at God for letting this happen to him. Then bargaining, where he's like, oh, well, if God just gave me the chance to speak to him, I would tell him what my qualms were with him. Depression, because he was obviously upset with the loss of his children and his possessions. And then finally acceptance, but not acceptance of God, but more so the concept of his anger towards God and his willingness to pretty much detest him, if that makes any sense.
Yep, absolutely. Good. You bring me to the second point, actually, right? Unknowingly. Job moves from being robotic to becoming passionate. He's full of emotions, right? The 5 stages of grief are 5 different emotions that you allow yourself to feel, right? First of all, denial, then anger, then sorrow. I forget which one, which order it is, right? For me, it would be anger throughout. I'd be stuck in that phase, right? And eventually, so what we see here is a Job before the Job we see in the prologue. There is no emotional quality. He's just going through the motions. We don't know what he's feeling, what he's thinking. He's just kind of like a robot, right? All of a sudden in the text now, when he goes through the suffering, there is an explosion of emotions. You see everything. Adu makes an excellent point. You see anger, frustration, anxiety. You see sorrow, depression, lethargy, right? You see the whole spectrum of emotions. All of a sudden he becomes emotional. Right? So let me write this down. The second thing that changes, right? He goes from being robotic to emotional. And emotional in a very unguarded, uncontrollable way. He's not emotional like we are supposed to be emotional, you know, and always keep it together. He's not together. He's completely undone. He's all over the place, right? So that's the second shift, right? Let's see. There were a couple questions as I was talking. Man, I can't believe I have to do this. I'm gonna call Zoom like tonight and go back to the old way. So much better. Okay, anyone knows the third shift that occurs for Job? So now we know he's rebellious, he's emotional. There's one more thing that is different from the Job in the dialogues with regards to the Job of the prologue. Anybody catch it? Okay. No? Nobody knows? In the prologue, do you think that Job knows what he's doing? Does he have a sense of how to play the game in the prologue? What would you say? Does he know the game, the rules? Or think he knows? Okay, Islam, very good, right? Job of the prologue knows the game, right? He knows if he does this, then that, right? If he offers the sacrifices, then God will forgive his children. If he is virtuous, then God will bless him. He knows the rules. He is very clear in his mind what to do, what not to do in order to get X, Y, Z result, right? So in a way, Job is very clear, right? He's very, he has mental clarity about how to live, what to do, and so forth. What do you see now in the dialogues that is different? I think there was one of you, Al-Haddai, go ahead.
So I just said that since now he lost all his power, he has no money, no kids, nothing to protect. Now he's speaking his mind. He's not holding back anymore.
Okay, good. I'm going to put that in the first point, right? He has nothing to lose, and now he's just going to say what he's got to say, right? So that's, again, the Job that is unhinged, Job without control, Job without any more, you know, of society's restrictions. He has nothing to lose, so he's going to say what he thinks, right? So, but going so good, right? That fits very nicely in the first one. But for this third one, how would you say Job is different from the first prologue Job, who knows how to do things, who understands the system, he knows the rules of the game? What's different now? Giannakopoulos, go ahead.
So like before, he knew what he had to do, and if he did something, then he knew the outcome. But now he's like, God, he questions God. He's like, God, why do you punish me if you know I'm righteous, if you know I'm innocent? He thinks that he knows he's innocent, right? And so he goes, if I'm innocent, like good is only supposed to happen. But he's confused now because he was innocent, quote unquote, but now only bad things are happening to him. So he really has no idea what's going on or what he should even do. And so he starts to question God. He's like, do you have a human mind? Do you see with a human eye? You know, like, are you really all knowing? And he questions him like, and continuously. And he just really does not know what to do.
Very good, right? He all of a sudden now he has no clue. God is cheating. It's like God is cheating at the game, right? The rules are not functioning. He's lost sense of what are the rules. How do we play this game? That's why he's asking God, what do you want from me? right? What do you want me to do? I've done everything. Why is this happening? He doesn't, the system is not working, right? There is a breakdown. So he's moving, as I put in the chat, from clarity to confusion. So I'm going to say a little more about that in a second, but there's a couple more questions I want to go over. Islam, and then go ahead, Islam.
Yeah, it just it's like I can't speak. Oh my god, it reminds me of how I learned when I was a kid. If God loves you, He tests you. So that kind of like, but it reminds me also how it's really like in the middle of the book, the dialogue. If I'm not wrong, he starts to rebel, and this is the other shift that happens. Instead of being, the perfect job and expecting the system to work the way it's supposed to work, but then God tests him. It reminds me of how he becomes rebellious, like how Satan becomes rebellious to when the Creator commands him to do something, but he doesn't, and God says, "I know things that you don't know." But yeah, just my 2 cents.
Absolutely, right? You're getting very nicely the first point, which is Job is not acting like himself, which is supposed to be nice, good, believer, submissive, right? Now he is all over the place, right? So make sure you've written down these 3 things, right? From submissive, he becomes rebellious. From robotic, he becomes emotional. From a clear, he becomes confused. And so we are here in a state, he has now arrived in a state where he is confused, all over the place emotionally, rebellious, losing everything that has restrained him. And now let's see what God thinks about this transformation, right? I know I did an aside till the end of the book, but if those of you read further, how does God react? What does he say about Job? How does he compare the friends with Job? What is God's perspective on the friends? And what is God's perspective on Job when you read the very end, the epilogue? Does anybody know? Has anybody gone that far? Whom does God prefer, in other words? Whom does God prefer? The friends or Job? Okay, Ibatulin, go ahead.
God prefers Job, and he rebukes the friends, and he says, "You guys should ask Job now that Job prays for you because you guys were wrong, but Job was right." And yeah, that's what he says.
It's a strange, unexpected development. We would expect God to be, telling the friends, "Thank you for defending me," right? "Thank you for standing strong for me," right? And to turn to Job and be like, you rebel, right? "Get out of my face. How dare you speak up, right, in my presence?" And yet, you have the opposite. God is like, "Oh, these guys, the friends, they don't understand anything. And Job, my servant, he's the one that I love," right? And so this is very strange. Why is it, let's go now and ask ourselves, why is it that God prefers Job? What does Job have in his emotionality, in his confusion, in his rebellion that God appreciates, right? Let's start with the first one. Let's look at confusion. What does God love about our confusion sometimes, right? We are confused. We don't know where to go. We don't know what's happening. We don't know the next step to take. We're lost. What is deeply attractive about that for God? What do you think? Al-Hadai, I think you had your hand up. Did you?
Well, curiosity, I'm guessing.
Okay, very good, right? So let's go one by one, right? The confusion. The confusion is beautiful. Why? Because it entails possibility of growth, right? If you're confused, it means that the old doesn't work. You have to find something new. I want to stop on that briefly because I want to elaborate on this. Anytime you are confused, right? Anytime you are either spiritually or emotionally confused and you don't know what's happening, what is the next step, why this is happening to you, you should rejoice. Why? Because the confusion is a sign that you're moving from an old paradigm into a new paradigm. You're moving from a narrow view to a broader view. Confusion is showing that you are evolving as a human being from one way of thinking to a deeper way of thinking. Are you following what I'm saying? Put your hand in the screen if you are, right? So there is here, what the text is telling us is that in God's eyes, there is beauty in our confusion. Why? Because this is us broadening. This is the process of us expanding. And as we expand, we don't know where we are. But we are actually indeed expanding. Very good. See a couple more hands. So Carucci and then Pinto.
Professor, I was going to say that I think that God likes our confusion, because if we knew his will and we understood his way of thinking, then we wouldn't need to rely on him. We wouldn't need him. We'd be just as powerful. And I don't think it's so that he keeps us submissive. I think that it's a perpetual way of us strengthening and keeping our connection to God.
Okay, very good, right? Confusion means we are losing control. It means at the same time that we're ready for the journey of faith, right? There is no faith without confusion. If you know where to go, you don't need faith, right? You know where to go, right? Confusion, in a way, is the prerequisite of faith. When you are confused, this is when you can trust, right? This is when you can surrender. As long as you're not confused, you're God. You're in control, right? So yes, absolutely. As Islam is saying, it's a blessing in disguise. Pinto, go ahead.
I was going to say that one of the main reasons why God likes our confusion is because the faith that we keep in him. That was what I was told as a kid. Whenever I had questions, they would always say, like, just keep your faith. And although it's a very weird response, at the same time, it makes sense. As long as we have faith that this is going to be our salvation, that this is going to be what, keeps us on the good path in life, then we don't really have to question, because, as long as we know that things will be good, we don't have to worry about it.
Right, exactly. But without the question, there would not be the opening up into faith, right? A believer who has no questions will never experience faith, right? Because they're already fine, right? So even though faith eventually appeases our questions, the faith can only begin when we've started to explore our questions, right? Okay, good. You guys are doing great. Let's go to the second one. Why does God love our emotionality? What is beautiful when we are out of control emotionally, whether it's in anger or depression or anxiety? What is beautiful about our emotions? What do you think? Okay, I see 3 hands. Let's start with Giannakopoulos, and then Carucci, and then Jaramillo. Okay, go ahead, Giannakopoulos.
So, God gave us free will, and when we express our free will, even if it's like our frustration, it pleases him because it shows that we're not being stagnant. We want to increase in our faith, and we want to go further on our journey of salvation. And it shows even if we're mad, God, why did you do this? We actively want to know why something happened instead of just sitting back and letting everything happen to us. I wrote in my response, one of my criticisms of Job was when everything first started happening to him, he just kind of said, "Oh, let it be God's will." God can take and God can give. God gave us so much good, he can give us some bad fortune, right? And I was like, yeah, that's a good way of thinking, but it's only a good way of thinking if you're also wondering why something bad happened. Is God giving me a test? It's not just saying, oh, God did bad to me, okay, that's fine. Is God giving me a test? Is God giving me too much on my plate? You kind of have to question why these things are happening. And if you don't, you're just going to stay stagnant on your spiritual journey.
Okay, I love it, right? Our emotions is what, this is what makes us alive and not just little robots, right? Our emotions, in a way, is us, make sure you write this down, right? Our emotions is us being real with God, right? If you the Job at the beginning, you mentioned that very nicely, Giannakopoulos, the Job who says, I'll take the good and the bad from God. This is the nice believer, Christian, Jewish, whatever, Job, right? Good Muslim Job, good Christian Job, good Jew Job, right? He's saying, okay, it's all good, God isn't. But when the last thing occurs and he explodes, right? This is Job not putting on a Christian smile anymore, right? This is Job who is losing it completely. He's not even able to play his role of the good Christian, the nice Jew, the good Muslim, right? He's all of it. But at that moment, he's also profoundly real. And this is what God loves. Yeah, he's rude, he's all over the place, he's out of control, but he's real, right? He's authentic, he's speaking from the heart. And God is like, yes, that's my man right there. Yeah, he's a little rude, yes, I know. But He's speaking from the heart. He's being real. And that I appreciate, right? Excellent. Very good. Let's see.
Professor, I just want to add one thing. So, like, God likes us to see or use our emotions, even if it's just anger, because even he did things out of anger, Like when he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, he didn't happily do it. He was angry that people were being so unrighteous and terrible and sinful and like the worst. And so he destroyed them. It wasn't out of happiness. He did it out of anger, So it's just like, it also shows that we're being more like him in a way. Excellent,
right? The God of the Hebrew Bible is very emotional, right? He goes through all the spectrums of emotions, right? So we have, right? So you're right. There's in a way, emotions are, at least in the Hebrew context, are not things we should be pushing down or repressing. We should actually feel free to feel them, right? Excellent. All right, let's see who else. Jaramillo, and then Adu. Sorry, Adu.
Yeah, I was gonna add on to what he said. I agree with a lot of what he said. It makes us human. It makes us real, like you said. And I feel like when we are vulnerable, like he was, our true colors start to come out. Make sense? So it shows like who we are.
I will add. I mean, I'm gonna develop what you said. Job is being vulnerable. This is something we often don't know how to do with God, right? We try to be all good Christians, right? We sit there, we have these long prayers, nicely embroidered, right? And we try to be all good, stable. God is like, no, be vulnerable, be you. If you come all messed up, right, bad hair, they come, right? Don't come all together. Let me give a story to illustrate what you just said, Jaramillo, which illustrates very nice what you said. There's a strange rule in the Hebrew Bible that says that when you build an altar, you're not allowed to polish the stones and cut them and polish them. You have to take the stone on the ground and put it as it is. You're not allowed to polish it. It's a strange rule, right? The altar should never be made of polished stone, it says. Can anyone interpret what is the meaning of this? It has something to do with what Jaramillo just said. Why can we not polish the stones as we build an altar? Oh, an altar is a mountain of stones on which you do a sacrifice. It's not a statue. There are no statues in the Hebrew Bible, God forbid.
Oh yeah, first commandment, sorry.
So it's a little mountain of rocks that you build, and on top of it, you make a sacrifice. Sing, go ahead, explain to us what you just said. You're on track.
What I was gonna say is that basically it's not authentic. So what you're talking about, like God wants us to be vulnerable, and when we're vulnerable, I think we show our true emotions and we express each feeling how it is in the moment. So when we polish things, I think we're trying to set up a good front or like put up an image that we're truly not, and we're not really following our spirituality like that. I think life is about like all these things are going to happen to us, all these obstacles. So we're not going to always have a good face on. And yeah, basically, yeah.
Absolutely, right? That when you come to God, you don't bring polished stones. You bring raw, uncut, unfiltered, right? That's the idea, right? God doesn't, he prefers we come real, authentic, vulnerable, than we come all nice, smelling good, Christian smile, doesn't need that, right? So that's the second thing we learn, right? From this outburst of emotion. Now, here's the tricky one. Why does God love Job's rebelliousness, his insolence, his audacity? Why does God love that? What do you think? Adu, sorry, Adu, it's been a while. Adu, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I was gonna say God probably loves him more for the sake that by being rebellious and speaking his mind, he's actually telling the truth as to what he feels about God. Which I'm sure as like an all-knowing almighty power, you don't really get that a lot, like honesty. So I feel like God would like that more. That way he doesn't have to feel like, okay, like I'm getting all this validation and prayer from a bunch of my followers, but how many of them are actually following me for the right reasons? Like, are they just there, because I'm their God, or is it more so like, are they going to actually build a connection with me, and are they going to be able to tell the truth and come to me and, you know, raw, unfiltered, just be authentic.
You got it, right? In fact, one of the main differences between Job and his friends is that his friends talk about God, but Job talks to God. Make sure you get this difference. I'm putting in the chat, right? The friends speak about God, but Job speaks to God. This is the main difference. So even though he's being insolent and he has the audacity to say some of the things he says, at least he's speaking to God. And this is kind of, you know, it's a nice change for God, right? As you're saying so nicely, Adu. He's so everybody's all there, all submissive, making prayers, you know, and there's no one really talking, right? Finally, someone has the audacity, the backbone to talk back, right? Refreshing, right? So in a way, God finds it refreshing when we're angry and frustrated and, you know, going like this to the heavens. It's like, interesting. Somebody's talking to me down here, right? So yes, there's something beautiful, even if we are insolent and, you know, inappropriate, at least we are speaking to God. And this is one of the beautiful moments of Job, is that he's the only one who pierces, right? The friends are still all in their bubble speaking about God. Job actually pierces through and ends up speaking directly to God. His anger pushes him to that level, right? We will be talking about God until something happens that undoes us to the point that we are now speaking to God, right? The trauma that we go through is the only thing that can bring us to that level, right? As long as you're a good, happy Christian or happy Jew or happy Muslim, you're not going to need to speak to God. You're going to speak about God. God is good all the time. God is good, you know. The moment you go through this darkness is the moment you will have no choice but to directly address the Creator, right? And this is what Job is able to do, right? Very nicely. Okay, let's see, a few more of you. Okay, Ahmad, Al-Hadai, Karushi, Al-Mulaiki, in that order. Go ahead.
I was going to say that when we're so fixated on our own ideology and or what we think what God is or what God wants, we kind of start worshiping our own intellect and our own ideas of God rather than God himself. So like you said, Job is trying to break that and go directly to the source.
Yeah, excellent, right? His friends are still caught up in representations of God. Job has destroyed all representations. In a way, he has destroyed all intellectual idols, and he is now standing in the very presence of the Creator, right? He has broken through all of those representations or conceptualizations of God, and he's now directly saying, who are you? I want to know now, right? Very good, nice, nice. Let's see, after Ahmad, there was, I forget the order, but I'm gonna put Al-Hadai, go ahead.
So I think since he did all that, it got this a strong relationship with God. Now it's based on trust and communication. Back then it was just like, give me more money or something like that.
You got it, right? Now we have trust, vulnerability, we have intimacy, right? There is no intimacy without vulnerability, without expressing, without being real, right? Before, there was no intimacy between Job and God. He was just, God was some distant thing in the over there, and Job was doing, right? Now they actually have a relationship, right? The pain that Job went through actually broke him to the point that he was capable of connecting directly to the Creator. And very often this is the role of pain in our lives, right? Let me stop just a couple seconds on that, right? When we suffer, it is an opportunity for us to come out and directly connect in a way that we couldn't as long as everything was going fine, right? When everything's going fine, what do we need to talk to the Creator? We talk to our friends, right? The suffering often brings us to the brink. It brings us to the limit of ourselves, and something ruptures. But that rupture is actually what could potentially make possible a direct connection, right? There's an opportunity in every painful moment to break out of yourselves and do what Job did, directly establish a connection, right, with the Creator. So that's very profound, right? Absolutely, Al-Hadai. Karuchi.
Hi, Professor. I was just gonna say one thing, but now to your last point, you know, I have heard many times in my own spiritual journey, you know, from those that are further along than I am, you know, it's just as important to pray and talk to God on days when everything is going well, in the same way you would on the days when, you know, it's raining and the roof is leaking, you know, because you run the risk of taking things for granted if you don't. But what I wanted to share with you in the class is one of the criticisms that I had was my take on his friends. What I had said in my writing is that, you know, it seems to me that his friends don't, you know, for as much as they say that they're people of faith, they don't apply any compassion or love or any, you know, emotion of friendship towards Job. Like not once did they say, we're going to pray for you so that God ends your suffering. I'm here for you. What do you need? You know, how can I help you? It's all more of the same. It's, you know, he's a fool for what he's thinking. He's actually a liar because he must have done something wrong, even though he says he doesn't. Like there's no way that he didn't, you know, you come clean. Like, you know, if God really wanted to cross-examine your life, I'm sure he'll find something. You know, so it's, I don't know, it just seems very hypocritical and very ironic. And, you know, the thought to me there is they seem to know their faith, but they don't know how to apply it. Yeah. And I think that God loves Job in that moment because Job, even at the end of the summation, he says, if you tell me what this is all about, I will bow down before you like a prince. You know, he doesn't lose his faith in any of this. He just wants to understand it. How does this apply to what's going on right now? Make me closer to you to understand. And I think that's why God loves Job in that moment, because he's asking him, how does this fit in with you and me and what I'm going through? Yeah. Make me understand and I'll be okay with it.
Excellent, right? What saves Job throughout all of the craziness that he utters, right, is that he never once loses the connection with the Creator. He's angry at the Creator, he's insolent, he has enormous audacity, but he is still connecting, right? This is what saves him. There's an invitation here, right? Whatever suffering we go to, right, we go through, keep the connection alive. You know, just be angry, be whatever you want to be, but keep the connection alive. This is what will get you to the other side. At least this is what Job is showing us, right? As long as you keep the connection, it can be a very angry, horrible, you know, frustrated, anxious, depressed connection, right? Doesn't matter how you show up, right? Clearly. As if you are able to maintain that connection, even if it is to just go look up in the sky and be like, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Right? Even if that's what you're saying, right? If you keep that connection, you will end up in a very interesting place at the end of the ordeal, right? There's something beautiful here that we're learning from Job. Now, there was one more. Al-Mulaiki, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say like how Job wanted, like, he wanted to prove his innocence like so badly, and he said that he would go and speak nothing. No, he would go and speak the truth like straight to his face, and like he was very confident in himself.
Yeah, there's absolute beauty in the audacity of Job, right? An invitation for us to be the same. Let's not be afraid to do that. That's the idea of the story, right? Good, good. Jasper, I think I skipped a few people, but I'll get back to you. Jasper, go ahead.
I kind of agree and disagree with what was said. Last person before that I do think he maintained the connection, Job himself, but I do think that his friends somewhat, you know, sympathized the way that they felt like they should. They all did pray together for I think like that 7 days straight, just straight silence, like they didn't even say anything. They just came and dropped and showed their devoutness right there. And I guess, you know, to maybe Job, eventually that wasn't enough, but at the beginning, I feel like that's somewhat of you know, we're here for you.
Yeah, that's true. That is a beautiful gesture, which they do the first 7 days, and then they open their mouths, yeah. Which ruins everything, right? But absolutely, that particular, this is also, you know, something we can learn, right? When someone is grieving, perhaps it's better to just be there and shut up. Don't try to interpret, and right? The friends are actually showing us, you know, at least initially, how we could deal with someone suffering, right? Let's see, Giannakopoulos, go ahead.
I had seen a couple of comments in the chat, and also Karuchi, he talked about how we have to be able to be thankful even especially when the times are good, right? So I remember this story my dad telling me. He's a priest, and he's telling me about how one saint, he had a dream. In that dream, he actually went up to heaven and he saw all our prayers going to specific saints and to God and to the Mother of Christ, Panaya. And so he saw thousands and thousands of angels carrying our prayers to God, right? Because God usually gets the most prayers. And then next to Panaya, the Mother of God, she got the most prayers. And then it goes down on the line, who gets the most prayers, all the way down to the least amount of prayers, right? And the least prayers were actually us being thankful. It was one lone angel at the table, and he had only a couple envelopes of prayers about how we were thankful. So lots of times we pray that we are saved, and we pray that we have salvation and that good things happen to us. But then lots of times we don't actually pray saying that we're thankful for what we got and reward for our prayers, And so I just thought that was interesting because, yeah, lots of good things happen to us in life, and we have to be really thankful when they do happen. Like, out of all of God's miracles, right? Out of all of Jesus Christ's miracles, I don't know, because I know we have some Muslim people and some people from other faiths, but I'm Orthodox Christian, and in the Bible, it said, in Christ, all of Christ's miracles, only one person ever came back to actually thank him, right? And that was the blind man. The blind man was the only one that truly came back and thanked him for returning his sight, not even knowing what Christ really looked like, but he knew that it was Christ, and he wanted to be thanked. He wanted to thank him. Even when he healed the paralytic never came back from the rooftop. He never came back down to say thank you. He kind of just left. So that like really reminded me of that story about how we just need to be more thankful and not just pray for what we need, but pray just to be grateful.
And it's interesting you bring that up because Job, even in the prologue when everything is going well, there is no prayer of thankfulness. There is still the prayer of fear. Please let my children not, sin. So this is another reason why Job is not yet very elevated in the prologue, right? If he becomes a prophet, like the Muslim tradition says, it's not yet the case in the prologue, right? He's not there yet. Okay, let me conclude briefly and then we can stay behind and go through a few more of your questions, right? So the bottom line, right? What we're seeing here is that Job becomes human, right? He was kind of the perfect believer, and now he has become human. And what's interesting is that it is as he falls into his humanity, he becomes confused and rebellious and angry and emotional. This is when he reaches the highest spiritual level. This is very powerful, right? Until you fall into your own humanity, until you embrace your humanity, until you become human, right? And not trying to put on a show, until you become you, real, only then will you begin to access a higher level of spirituality, right? That's what we're learning. As Job is becoming more human, he's becoming more spiritual. This is the opposite of what many religions teach, right? Many religions say, no, you have to leave behind your humanity. You have to become perfect, and then God will accept you. Here we have the opposite. The more human we are, the more vulnerable, the more fragile, the more broken, the more angry, the more frustrated, the closer we can get to the realm of the Creator, right? And so this is an invitation, right, for us to be human, to be real. Let's be authentic, right? Let's be fully real, because this is the type of encounter that God loves, right? Coming as we are, all messed up, as long as we're coming is good, right? That would be one of the lessons, right? You're full of doubts and anger and frustration. Perfect. You're ready, right? You're depressed, you're lonely, you don't know what to do next. That's it. You're ready. You're at this level, you're on the verge, right, of having this amazing direct connection, right? So anytime we fall into these states that most religions despise, you're depressed, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're anxious, and everyone is telling you, have faith, have faith. The text is not saying have faith. The text is saying, Be angry, be frustrated, be anxious, but come. Show up, talk, say it, express it, right? And then we'll see what happens, right, from that. Now, next time, we're going to see God's answer. And what I want you to do, the little homework you do in addition to the reading assignment, little homework in your head, I want you to think whether you like that answer or whether you don't like that answer, right? I'm going to ask you how many of you liked the answer and how many of you didn't like the answer. We're going to look at that. And then we're going to look at the epilogue, which, remember, is ironic. This is not to be taken literally. There is some irony there too, right? So we need to be aware of that. Okay. By the way, great reading assignments, right? I really enjoyed it. Now, we can continue the questions. If you need to leave, you can leave. If you want to stay, you can stay. Let me continue getting the last few questions. Islam, and then Giannakopoulos, and then I saw Jasper. Jasper?
I think some people were before me. Oh wait, they took their hands down?
Jasper? Gone. Jasper.
I think he
Giannakopoulos.
forgot to take his hand down from the last.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, so we can continue a little bit the discussion. Islam, go ahead, because
Really quickly, I just wanted to also add how, because I can't. I'm trying to pronounce your name, bro. Giannakopoulos.
Giannakopoulos.
Correct?
Yeah, Giannakopoulos.
Giannakopoulos. All right, copy. Yeah. So basically, I want to add how what you were saying, how we should be grateful, and also to what Karuchi was saying, that in our blessings we should be grateful because, I don't know. It's also good to be grateful in our blessings and our trials. Try to keep it balanced. But I also read something. It may be a Sufi saying or some type of. I don't know the source. I can't give it to you the source, but I do remember it says that the believer, when he's grateful, no, when he does good things for, like, acquiring worldly wealth or money, or he's doing good deeds to acquire good, like, he's doing good things to acquire good deeds on his scale of good deeds or a scale of bad deeds. Well, the person who, like, does that is more of a merchant, and the person who is actually worshiping the creator in the many ways we all worship the creator in different shapes and forms and different ways of worship, that the ones who actually worship the creator because they're grateful but not is actually most beloved to God, compared to people who do it just for good deeds, and they're trying to rack up good deeds as like a type of currency for the afterlife. So I just want to say that, yeah, being grateful goes a long way. And from my perspective, being grateful, the creator has said, if you're grateful, then you will be given more. So
okay, but be careful, guys, who are staying a long time on gratefulness. There is no gratefulness here.
Not in the book. Not in the book. Yeah.
Right? Let's not try and gloss this over and be like, oh, we should be grateful. This is not what Job is teaching us, right? He's not saying be grateful at all times. He's saying be real. If you don't feel grateful, don't say anything, right? So be careful not to turn Job into a saint. Right?
I feel like we can be grateful and, like, think like we're, like, on the right path, but, like, how do we really act when we're tested?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what we're learning is that it's okay not to feel grateful. You know what I mean? It's okay at times to not feel grateful and to not say anything grateful and to, on the contrary, complain. Right? That's what we're learning here, right? So be careful. I totally get it, the gratefulness, but be careful because this is not what the text is teaching right now, right? We will see this gratefulness, by the way, Islam, when we study the Sufi poet, Rumi. He will be mentioning this notion, right? But here in the text, I don't want to move too far away from the text. We have no gratefulness.
Yeah,
right?
my bad.
No worries. Giannakopoulos, you have one last comment?
Yeah,
Let us hear about gratefulness.
No, that's not. So you were saying how like a lot of religions preach not to show your emotions and stuff like that, but like in my religion, we don't preach that because we've seen in the Bible, Christ showed his emotions multiple times. He showed his anger at with the merchants in the temple, right? He showed how sad he was when his friend Lazarus died, and when he went to go resurrect him. He showed emotions multiple times. Even God shows emotions when like when he flooded the world, when he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, right? They both showed emotions during these times, and it's good to show emotion because it shows that we're way more real. Like you were saying before, we're more real with God. When we're sad that let's say like our spouse died, it's like, God, why do you take it from her? You know how sad it would make me be. stuff like that. It makes us show that we're more real with him.
Good.
And like Islam's saying, God gave us emotions for a reason, not so that we could lock them away, right? Like just like he gave us free will, he wants us to use these emotions because these emotions can allow us to reach greater heights.
Excellent, right? And I love the way you described the Christ, right? Jesus was very emotional. And when I watch a movie, right, with about Jesus, it's always this kind of very placid Buddha kind of, very peaceful, always serene face, no emotion. It just drives me crazy because the actual Jesus in the Gospels was very emotional, right? Very passionate, and we don't see this in the cinematography, right? When we have a movie about it. So excellent, very good point.
Yeah, like one of our icons of Christ is it was made by two different people, right? Half his face was made by one, and the other half was made by the other, and it shows like his two natures. One that he's very passionate and loving, and the other one showing that he's his sternness, and his willingness to like kind of put you down, and that doesn't show that Christ has no emotion. It shows that Christ is emotion, right? Yeah. Christ is love, Christ is sternness, Christ is anger, Christ is these many things, right? Excellent. And like that's what we have to learn from him.
Very good. Good example. Excellent. Anybody else before we conclude? Okay, good. Let's see. Good. If any of all right, so I'm gonna conclude. If any of you still have questions, you can stay. Whoever else, you can go. But if you still want to talk personally, we can talk. I'm always available, as you know, after class for any further questions or crisis you're going through, spiritual crisis. I'm always there for that. So you can always come after class. I'm always free for anything you're dealing with, whether it's a question on class or a question about your life. All right, so you guys can go. I think I'm looking in the chat. Yes, we can talk. I'll do about it. I'll do about it. As soon as I get the homework, Colon. What do you mean? What do you want to know?
Or like, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to read the other half of the book?
Yes. It's always the same thing. You read the other half, you do the same reading assignment.
Okay.
Always the same. Yes, Colon. Good. Anybody else? Al-Mulaiki, you have a question? No? Okay. I don't see your name anymore. The one with the hand up. Al-Haddai. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I don't remember exactly, but he said that there are a lot of crimes and God sees these crimes, but he does nothing. So he acts like he didn't see anything, right? So since he had all these thoughts, and he thinks that God is not perfect and like he's not doing the stuff that he promised that he's going to do, why believe in him from the first place?
You have to wait. We don't know yet what God is thinking, right? We're not there yet because the prologue we know is fake. Right, so we're gonna wait next time when we get to the God's response, actual response when he's talking. Then we're gonna have we're gonna see, right, who God truly is. So then you can see, you'll have a clearer vision, right, of the type of the vision of God that the author is trying to give us, right? So maybe then your question will be answered, right? So is that what you were saying something about? Remind me exactly what you were saying so I can remember it when I talk about it next time.
He said that God sees crimes, but he does nothing about it.
Oh, yeah.
He acts like he didn't see anything, even though...
Yeah, this is the question we all have, right? How can God, who has the power to change things, not do anything, right? This is the question, right? So when we have the whole class, by the way, is on this question, right? Everybody that we're going to study is going to answer this question differently. So wait until we get next time, when we'll see God's answer, and tell me at the end of class if you were, at the beginning, maybe you were not satisfied, but tell me at the end of class how you feel about that answer, if it answered that question right now.
All right.
We have to wait. Okay, Al-Haddai. Isaiah, who is Isaiah? What's your last name, Isaiah? No answer.
Wait, which Isaiah? Because there's like 3 in the class.
There's one here that says Isaiah A.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I'm Isaiah too, so I was like,
sorry, yeah, okay. Isaiah is not answering. Go ahead, Adu. Ask your question. You were talking about psychedelics.
Yeah, okay. So I was wondering because like a lot of the stuff that you talk about and mention in class, like go hand in hand with, I guess, psychedelic talk. Because like that's something that I particularly study as well. So like whenever you say like certain things, I'll like reflect back to like psychedelic talk, and I'm like, oh my god, like that's something that I've either personally experienced or have witnessed and heard other people like talk about and through their experiences. And I'm just like, like, does the professor have like any kind of like knowledge in that realm? Like,
What is this psychedelic talk? Tell me, what am I saying that sounds like psychedelic talk?
okay, so like when you mentioned today about paradigm shifts, right?
Yeah.
Granted, the word paradigm can be used in like a general sense, but like in psychedelic talk and like theories, I guess, paradigm shifts are like a really big thing. So that's why I was like a little like, I guess, curious to see whether or not you knew anything about it. But yeah.
So no, I don't know anything about psychedelics.
Okay.
Right. There is, when they describe the experiences, this notion of expansion of your mind, right? And also this notion of entering a new paradigm. There are ways to do this. I mean, life can do this to you too, right?
Right.
So of course you can chemically induce it, or you can go through some trauma which will do this, have this effect, if you allow it, right? You have to suffer in the right way. So yeah, so I tend to think with regards to psychedelics that you can achieve the same effects, also, you know, through experientially, right?
Right.
So in general, but that's interesting. I'm gonna remember that I sound that what I'm saying sounds like psychedelic talk.
No, it does a lot, a lot.
I guess, you know, philosophy in a way, I think, does that to your mind, right?
It does, yeah.
The psychedelics are there to kind of open your mind and you start to think outside of the box. If you study philosophy long enough, you're so used to hearing other perspectives and also arguing for them, even if you don't agree, that your mind develops in the same way as if you were taking LSD or whatever.
Right.
So maybe it's the philosopher's mind you're tapping
into. It could be that, yeah.
If
I was just like, wow, they're so similar. Like, because like, I can't say without personally getting myself in trouble, but like, let's say a friend has experience in that. But like through those experiences, like I've come to know, I guess, my own like philosophical view on life, I guess, but it like coincides with everything that you teach. So that's why I was like curious about it.
I used to tell my students, you know, don't do drugs, do philosophy. You'll have an effect, you know? So there are ways. And in fact, if you go even deeper in Eastern philosophy, right, they are able to induce some
Buddhism.
of these states, right, through meditation, through certain practices. So, and in fact, if you study a little bit, there's a guru right now who is very famous. I mean, he's not particularly Hindu, but he's very famous right now, called Sadhguru. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I haven't, no.
Look him up. He's very big right now in India. He's kind of bringing Hinduism in a very palatable way to the Western audience. And he says something like this. He says, I can reach those states through meditation naturally, right? I don't need to bust cells in my brain to do it. I can actually, through enough practice, reach. So he tends to say it is good to want to expand your mind, but there are different ways of doing it. So you can look into him. He has an interesting approach. But yeah, I would say philosophy will have the same effect. As you can see clearly.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
That's so funny. I'm going to tell my friends who said that, and we're going to have a good laugh.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No worries, Adu. Anything else? Anybody here? Okay, great.
Okay. I can go. I'll stay behind. It's fine.
You what, Ahadai?
I'll stay behind. I said it's fine. They can go.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, perfect.
Okay, so.
Go ahead.
Well, from our discussion, our group discussion, I still have my questions that I didn't really understand. So why would God listen to an accuser? Something that he made. Why would he test Job, even though like he's God, he's so knowledgeable, he knows everything, he's so aware. So why test his servant, even though like he knows, he does not need to test them if he already knows.
Be careful, that's the prologue, right? This is a kind of imaginary scenario, right, that the author is coming up with. kind of to set up this story, right? Remember, this is a work of fiction. It's not, literal, right? The intention of the text is not to be literal. There are passages in the Bible that are to be taken literally, not this one. So here he's kind of setting it up in a way.
Like same way with Adam and Eve. Why set the tree? Like he already knows the answer. He made Adam and Eve.
If you want to know this question, I'm teaching a class on the tree. Exactly that question on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You should show up. I'm gonna give you the exact times. But to make it short, the tree, in my view, the important function of the tree is to place a limitation. If we have no limitation, right, as human beings, if we can do whatever we want, we are missing something important, which is ethics, right? In other words, if you can do anything you like, if there's no limitation placed on you, you're going to just take. Right? And if you're never taught that there are things you can't take, you're going to become a completely immoral person, right? So the tree, in a way, and again, I don't know if this is a literal, right? Or if it is just a symbolic reenactment that God is saying, here there is a limit. You need to have limits, right? You can't just eat every fruit. There are things that aren't fruits, right? You know what I mean? So this is, I think, the purpose of the tree in the garden, is to teach the human being that there are things they cannot touch, right? There are things they cannot possess. There are things they cannot take. And
Well, at the same
beginning of it.
Well, he didn't teach them. He didn't tell Adam and Eve anything. He just told them not to touch the tree.
Yeah. But
that's not like literally teaching. It's just.
No, but remember, this is not a literal story, right? This is a philosophical story where we're learning through the story that God, at least when we interpret it, God might be teaching them limitation. Do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So in that sense, right? So how does this connect to Job? What was the thing you said before? Oh yeah, the prologue, right? So be careful, right? Because he's simply, because
that's what I thought the author is doing.
Just like it's a fiction, right, that will lead him. He's trying to make the story interesting, but we will see that the God of the prologue is nothing like the God that will emerge, right, in the dialogue. So he wants to move away from that traditional vision. A lot of us see God like this. Oh, God is, allowing suffering so I can be tested, so we can see if I'm a good.
That's what they say. They'd be like they tell us, if you pray, if you read or whatever, you do all the religious stuff, you're gonna get good things. You'll get money, you'll get rich, and you get closer to God, and you'll go to heaven. So what Job did was, he was on the right track. He was not doing anything wrong.
Perfect. So in the prologue, it's what they say.
I do know, and it's so obvious because he has slaves, which is of course
exactly.
And he's just not the stuff that he's saying at the end. It just means that from the start he had all these questions, but he couldn't say them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're moving away from this traditional view that if you're good, you'll be rich, and God is, testing you. It's not happening. This is not what the author wants us to know. So we're moving away from that vision. Makes sense, Al-Haddai?
Yeah, you can call me Mona.
I like Al-Haddai. It sounds nice.
I do like my last name too, but it's easier because not everyone can pronounce Al-Haddai.
Al-Haddai, what does it mean, Al-Haddai?
No.
Look it up. I'm interested. Yeah, so we'll see. Well, we're going to enter God's response, and it's very multi-layered response, easily misunderstood. We're going to see next time. It's going to be very exciting. Anything else from either of you?
No, I'm okay.
You're good.
No, just what was the name of that class that you were teaching about the tree?
Oh, this is Plato in the Bible. Yeah, you guys should come. If you email me, I'll send you syllabus and a Zoom.
Okay.
And you can join anytime you want to. This is PHIL 250, and I teach it in the same classroom. Actually, you don't need the link. You just show up in the same classroom anytime you want. You're always welcome. Tuesday, Thursday, 3:10 to 4:25. So anytime you want to come. So we're actually going to do the tree. So this week, I think next Tuesday. But you want to come because we're going to do Adam and Eve for the next 2 weeks, right? So tomorrow I will introduce the book of Genesis. Thursday I will talk about Genesis 1 and 2. This is the creation of the man and the woman. And then next Tuesday we'll talk about the tree and the curse, right? And everything. So you can come anytime. We're doing a lot. We're doing Genesis. We're doing Ecclesiastes. I'll send you the syllabus. We're doing actually the Gospel of John. It's a whole text. It's on the Hebrew Bible, the Book of Ruth, Esther, Song of Songs. This is the program, right? So if you want, if you email me, I'll send you the syllabus. And anytime you want to pop in, you can pop in. Same classroom.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Take care. Bye.
Bye,
Have a
guys.
good one. See ya.
Yep, see you. Isaiah A, who is this? Isaiah A.
No, other one.
No, Isaiah, I'm leaving. Isaiah A, I'm leaving.